Hey everyone, I just wanted to go and do a quick YouTube video on one of my favorite commander decks to play, Syr Konrad the Grim. Syr Konrad, he is a mono black commander. He costs 3 and 2 black, and he has a wall of text on him. It's whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Syr Konrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then for 1 and a black, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So you mill everyone for 1. And then his power toughness, he's a 5/4, which can be quite relevant sometimes. Now, with Syr Konrad, there are a couple things that I want to go over. The first is how the mana and the mana rocks that I use, and the other ways that I like to ramp. So for mana rocks that I use in Syr Konrad, I of course use Soul Ring, then Arcane Signet, pretty much 2 mana rocks you find in almost every commander deck. Then I do also have a Mana Crypt in here, and with it being mono black, a Charcoal Diamond. The other ways that I like to ramp in here is I do play Crypt Gas, where whenever you tap a swamp for mana, you add an additional black mana to your mana pool. And that is a 2/2 creature that costs 3 and a black. I also play a Dark Ritual for the 1/10 ritual effect to ramp up. I run all snow-covered swamps, so I also go and use Extraplanar Lens. Extraplanar Lens, you exile a land underneath it, and then it will be to imprint, and whatever land with the same name as the imprint card is tapped for mana, the controller adds 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produces. What that does well for me is running snow covereds. I don't have to worry about anyone else typically also running snow covered swamps. I then run Black Market. Black Market is 3 and 2 black. Whenever a creature dies, you put a charge counter on Black Market, and at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you add a black mana to your mana pool for each charge counter on Black Market. This could go and make a lot of mana very quickly. And the other one that is ramp in a non-traditional sense, Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. He's 4 and 3 Phyrexian. He has lifelink, and for each black mana in a cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana, so you can pay 2 life to go and pay your mana, which does help ramp because life is a resource. Now, what I also run in here is I do run quite a few tutors. I run Demonic Tutor and Vampire Tutor, the traditional tutors. Then I also run Diabolic Intent and Diabolic Revelation. And the reason why I like Diabolic Revelation, I know it's an unusual tutor to see, is because for late game, when you have a lot of mana just to put somewhere, you can get all of your win conditions off 1 tutor. It's X, 3 and 2 black. You search your library for up to X cards and put those cards into your hand, then shuffle your library. The other one I like to use is Scheming Symmetry. And Scheming Symmetry is a little bit of a weird one, because you're also letting an opponent tutor at the same time. For 1 black mana, you choose 2 target players, and you pretty much always choose yourself. Each of them searches their library for a card and then shuffles their library and puts it on top of it. The reason why I like that is because of Syr Konrad. For Syr Konrad, he has an activated ability for 1 and a black. You can go and mill. Each player mills a card. So what I do is I go and use Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, as a shuffle effect that I will go and activate Syr Konrad and then shuffle my graveyard back into my library. It also takes that card away from my opponent that they went and tutored for. And now that we're on creatures, the other creatures I like to run either go and lead directly to killing creatures, a win condition, or they're just very good creatures in general. Netherlebian Legion, he's just a very good 1-drop. He's 1 black mana for 2 and a black. He gets +3/+3 and gains death touch until end of turn. If you give your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then I also run Opposition Agent, the new card from Commander Legends. It has flash, and it stops your opponents from tutoring and lets you take their tutors directly from their library. Now, what I do with us playing a lot of Webcam Commander, if I would go and draw this, I just run Esfale Defined. Then I run Butcher Malk here. It's a big flyer that whenever it or another creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So that goes and allows me to get more Conrad triggers. Blood Artist. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. It does 2 things for us. 1, it doubles up on those Conrad triggers. 2, it gains life back because I'm going to go and spend life, as you see with Keurig. Fate Unraveler is one of those other cards that's just a good card, that whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Unraveler deals 1 damage to that player. I run this for one of 2 reasons. 1, it's just the incidental damage, that it could go and whittle down life totals for people. 2, it stops people from trying to wheel as much, or just trying to go and draw tons of cards at a time. Then Sheoldred, the Whispering one. 5 and 2 black, Swamp Walk. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. Does 2 things for us. 1, it gives a Swamp Walk. So a lot of times, all your opponents are playing swamps because black is one of the most popular colors in Commander to play. Also, Urborgs are also always in play. 2, you trigger both off your upkeep and return a creature card from your graveyard, also your opponent's upkeep by them having to sacrifice a creature, giving more Conrad triggers. IR, First of Locthwain. Whenever another black creature enters the battlefield or under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So yet again, more pings and more life gain, and then you also get sacrifice another black creature and draw a card, so it gives a sack outlet and a draw outlet. Archfiend of Depravity. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures he or she controls and sacrifices the rest. This keeps token decks underneath control, plus it goes and triggers Conrad. Midnight Reaper. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. Card draw built into the deck, you always need it. Solemn Simulacrum, Sad Robot. It's a creature that you want to die. It acts as ramp by giving you a basic land. Plus you get to draw a card. And Bloodghast. It just goes and acts with Conrad where it has landfall and you can bring it back from the graveyard. So it's just something else to trigger off Conrad. Now these are now I want to go on to the removal I run. Some removal is traditional removal that you might think board wipes, target removal. Other removal is some other removal that you might not think of being removal. The board wipes that I like to run are Toxic Deluge, Damnation, and then Massacre Girl. I really like Massacre Girl because it leaves her body on the board at all times. so you don't have to worry about going and losing her. Then I run target removal in Deadly Rock, which the one problem with Deadly Rock is it doesn't go and actually trigger Conrad since it is an exile effect. I run Swift N, so I run Murderous Rider, so I get both the adventure side of him and the Murderous Rider, which what he does is he also has lifelink. So, and when he dies, you put him on the bottom of the library. So you get 2 death triggers with him. 2 Conrad triggers, one when he dies, and one when he leaves the graveyard to go to the bottom of the library. Feed the Swarm. The only targeted enchantment removal that you have in mono black. You lose life equal to the permanent's converted mana cost. It's one of my favorite cards, if not my favorite card from Zendikar Rising. Then these other 2 things that I run as creature removal can be very hit and miss, and it's actually letting an opponent sacrifice creatures. It's a Plague Crafter that when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. And Rankle, Master of Pranks, that whenever he deals combat damage to a player, choose any number, where it's discard a card, lose 1 life, and draw a card, and each player sacrifices a creature. So those are ways to go and remove creatures from the opponent's battlefield. Now, other cards that I would say that are just good cards that I run that don't necessarily go and lead to a win con for Conrad, but they do go and help move the game along or help in the local meta I play on. So Dreadhorde Invasion, it gives me a body where I just amass 1, have the zombie army. If I need something to sack, I have that to sack that zombie army to sack it to. Plus, in the end, after the zombie army becomes a power 6 or greater, it gains lifelink. And that also works for zombie tokens, not just zombie armies. Then I also run Dictative Erebos, which is also creature remove 1 away, that whenever a creature I control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Phyrexian Arena, which is just more card draw. And this one is definitely a local meta call. It's Tainted Remedy. Tainted Remedy is 2 and a black, and if an opponent would gain life, that player loses that much life instead. And the reason why I run Tainted Remedy is because it's very hard to keep life gain decks in check unless you go and kill them with commander damage or Infect. And this makes it so they can't gain life and are actually hurting, actually dying. I've had multiple times where I have a friend that has a veto deck that she uses the Blood Bond combo between Exquisite Blood and Veto. Or Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond if she loses Veto or can't get Veto back out to win the game. This makes it so she dies. Then I run Liliana Dreadhorde General, which can act as creature removal, but also as card draw for the deck, and also gives zombie tokens, and is a suited board wipe. Then another Commander Legends card, Tefajat, Doom of Fools. I really like this because it is card draw, and it also gives you bodies on the board in the form of 0/1 Thralls. But in the end, you could also you will probably never get to -10 it, but if you do, it gives you their commanders, and it could a lot of times remove engines from your opponent's game. Now, the artifacts that I run that aren't mana rocks, I run a couple of them. Now, all these that I'm talking about aren't necessarily win cons, and I'm going to go through in a separate section. But I run Altar of the Brood. When a permanent enters the battlefield, each opponent mills 1. Could go trigger Conrad. Elixir of Immortality. I'm planning on milling a lot. For 2 and tapping this, you gain 5 life. Then you shuffle Elixir of Immortality and Graveyard into your library. So it gets you cards from your graveyard back into your library, triggering Konrad from your graveyard, leaving your library for those creatures. These are always in a pair: Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves. Much like Elixir of Immortality, there's also Feldon's Cane. The difference is Feldon's Cane actually exiles itself, but you still shuffle your graveyard into your library. Sack Outlet and Altar of Dementia, where you sacrifice a creature and target player mills that many cards equal to the power of the creature. And then Whip of Erebos, it does two things. It gives creatures lifelink, so you gain life. Then it also can go and trigger a creature leaving a graveyard, triggering Konrad. And in times, it could just be that blow that you might need to go and hit someone with. Other cards I run, for sorceries I run Living Death, which each player exiles all creature cards from his or her graveyard, and sacrifices all creatures he or she controls and puts all cards he or she exiled this way onto the battlefield. It triggers Konrad for me a lot, with the creatures leaving my graveyard and getting sacrificed, plus opponents sacrificing all their creatures. Agadeem's Awakening. I like this because it is one of the new modal double face cards. So I can return creatures from my graveyard, or if I need to go and play it as a land, I just go and play it as a land. Buried Alive, you search your library for up to 3 creature cards, then put them into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. With this, I run it one of 2 ways. I either go for Bloodghast, Gravecrawler, and just a random card, a random other creature that I don't think I'll need in the future. Or I just go for 2 random creatures that don't really matter, and Ulamog. Depends on what point I'm in the game. If I'm in an early game, I'll get Gravecrawler to go and Bloodghast to get them out of the graveyard. If it's late game, I try to get Ulamog to go and deal that killing blow with those 3 cards triggering Konrad going into the graveyard, and all the creatures that are there leaving the graveyard. And then finally, Forever Young. It's 1 and a black. You put any number of creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library, then draw a card. So this triggers your creatures just leaving your graveyard, and it gives you one of those creatures back that you might have lost that you need to get in the future. Now I want to go over mana base. So my mana base, I run a total of 32 lands, 33 if you include the modal double face. 22 of them are these snow-covered swamps. Then I run Gaia Reach Sanitarium, Castle Lockthwain, Memorial to Folly, Jikabog, Reliquary Tower, Nykthos, and Witch's Cottage. So they all have their utility. Witch's Cottage, it returns a creature from my graveyard to top of my library. Nykthos is another form of mana ramp. Reliquary Tower, just because that's a commander staple that you have in all decks. Plus, I play against some people that like to make their opponents draw cards, and I really hate discarding. The Jukabog, yet again, just a staple. Memorial to Folly, return that creature from the graveyard to my hand. Lockthwain is for card draw, and Gaia Reach Sanitarium is just for looting. So card draw again. Now, how I win. I win in a couple of different ways. The most innocuous way that I win is I just go with the alternate win con of Revel in Riches, where for 4 and a black, whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you create a colorless treasure artifact token. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Now, as I have shown, I want creatures to die. The other one is a mono black staple or a black staple. It's Flux Reservoir, Sensei's Divining Top, and Bowls of Citadel. And how this works is you have Bowls of Citadel out. You tap Sensei's Divining Top, draw a card, put it on top of the library. You pay 1 life to go and cast Sensei's Divining Top. You then gain the life with Aether Flux Reservoir. Aether Flux Reservoir has a storm count that whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you cast this turn. So the second time you draw that card and cast Divining Top, you actually gain 2. Next time 3, while each time you're only paying 1. Then you pay the 50 life to deal 50 damage to target creature or player, killing your opponents that way. The other way is with Turmoil the Desecrator, Gravecrawler, and Phyrexian Altar. Now, Turmoil the Desecrator doesn't have to be him. It could be any other zombie, but it really is Phyrexian Altar and Gravecrawler, specifically with Syr Konrad out on the battlefield. So what you do is you have to have a zombie out. I like Turmoil because Turmoil plays to Conor where whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So you sack Gravecrawler to Phyrexian Altar, making a mana. You want to make a black mana, so you could then recast Gravecrawler, have it leaving the graveyard. Each time you do that, you get a 2/2 black zombie from Turmoil, and then you also trigger Conrad. But even say that you don't have Conrad out, and you only have Turmoil, Gravecrawler, Phyrexian Altar. With getting that extra 2/2 black zombie, you're actually making infinite mana as well, and infinite zombie tokens, that unless there's something stopping you from going and casting Conrad from your command zone, you win just by having that infinite mana. Because then you can just trigger Conrad infinite times, and Ulamog will go and shuffle back in for you. The other one requires some setup in Bloodchief Ascension and Mindcrank. Mindcrank is whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And Bloodchief Ascension is at the beginning of each end step. If an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Bloodchief Ascension. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. So what happens once you have Bloodchief Ascension on the 3 quest counters? You trigger Mindcrank, your opponent has to mill cards. Because they milled cards, they lose 2 life, which then goes and makes them have to mill cards again with Mindcrank, and you mill your opponents out. And it just keeps going on that loop until they have no more cards in their library. Or until they have 0 life, whatever happens first. The next way that I like to win is with Infect. Phyresis and Glistening Oil. What happens with Conrad a lot of the time is that people go and get hit by it for 10 damage or 15 damage, and they really start teaming up on you. You get the entire table turning against you because even though they're not getting hit for maybe a ton of life, it's just they don't like getting hit for incidental damage over and over and over again. In going and putting Infect on Conrad, you then make it so Conrad only needs to trigger 10 times to go and kill someone, instead of a lot more to go and make them lose all their life. The other thing that I like to put it on is Fate Unraveler, because then you just get that 1 incidental life gain, 1 incidental Infect every time they draw a card. The other things that I like to do is it's also infinite mana. So another way to get infinite mana in the deck is with Deserted Temple, Cabal Coffers, and Rings of Brighthearth. And the reason why I've Urborg here as well is to go make it so Cabal Coffers goes for more mana. So as many of you know, Cabal Coffers for 2 and tapping it, you add black mana equal for each swamp you control. With Urborg, all of your swamps, all your lands are swamps, so all your lands contribute to the Cabal Coffers. Deserted Temple, you add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. For 1 and tapping it, you untap target land. With Rings of Brighthearth, whenever you play an activated ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 2. If you do, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So what happens is you tap Cabal Coffers. Say you have 5 swamps out. You tap it, you go and make 5 black mana. You then use 1 of that black mana to tap Deserted Temple to untap target land. Use 2 of that to go and copy with the Rings of Brighthearth. and then you just repeat the step and do it all over again. Then that'll give you infinite mana. Another way that you get infinite mana is, again, Rings of Brighthearth and Basalt Monolith. So you tap Basalt Monolith, you pay the 3 to untap it, and then you pay the 2 to retap it, copy the untap tracker to tap it again. And you just make infinite colorless mana that way. And with those infinite mana sources, you want payoffs. The payoffs that you have in the deck are either just dumping it all into Conrad himself, or you could go and dump it into a Torment of Hailfire or an Insinuate. So Torment of Hailfire, for X and 2 black, you repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life, unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Extenuate is each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to the life lost that way. So pretty much you could go and make each opponent lose 100 life, and you gain 300 life if you have 3 opponents still. Or Torment of Hailfire, you pretty much make them sacrifice everything, and then they just lose 3 life after everything would have been sacrificed anyway. And then the final win con also requires Conor to be out. It's going back with Basalt Monolith and Mesmeric Orb. Mesmeric Orb, whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. So you tap Basalt Monolith, you untap it, I have to mill a card. Keep doing that over and over again, and mill myself, triggering Conor each time. When a mob hits, it goes and puts everything back to the library, and you just keep repeating that over and over and over again. So that is my Conrad deck tech, the different things I do to go and win with the deck, and the little different things that I have in that are maybe just meta dependent and might not necessarily be for all decks. Here's a picture of the deck list. Included in the links below will be the link to my Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, as well as the deck itself. If you like, comment, and subscribe to the video, and then just come back, give me any opinions or any thing that you would do to go and improve the deck. Any other feedback that you have, it's also greatly appreciated. Have a great day.